Friends, welcome to another episode of Auto Afflicted. I'm your host, Ali Goulet, and today, special treat for me, Audi TT RS. This is a 2012 turbocharged 5-cylinder 2.5-liter engine. It's beyond beautiful in my opinion. I'm going to tell you why I think it's the best Audi there ever was. I'm going to talk about how cool the turbocharged 5-cylinder motor is. We're going to rip it up a canyon, and we're going to get into all of that right now. Right, so 2012 Audi TT RS. What does that mean? Well, the RS stands for basically racing sport. There's a German version of it as well. I'm not going to pretend to remember what that is, but the RS is for racing sport. In the RS, you get something special in the TT. They gave it a nod to history, to motorsport history, to one of my favorite engines and a lot of people's favorite engines. So I grew up on rally and just loved what the Audi Quattro did, the Sport Quattro, and that 5-cylinder turbo motor. And so at one point I had a coupe, which I actually had a 5-cylinder motor transplanted into. This was the turbocharged 2.5-liter 5-cylinder motor, and I just really loved that. So when I heard that they had put out a TT with an inline 2.5-liter turbo, it's been something that's kind of on my bucket list to drive. Probably going to be on my bucket list to own after this, but just super cool. One of the main differences between, say, the turbo 5-cylinder that I had in my car previously and this one is that in the original cars it was a longitudinal, so front to back. In this particular chassis, due to the Haldex and due to the platform that it sits on, it is a transverse engine, so a little different, but definitely a nod to Audi's history. And the other reason I love this so much in the TT is that when the TT came out, I just thought this is the car that I've been waiting for from Audi. I've always been a coupe fan. This is a pillarless coupe, unfortunately. Unlike a Benz, this doesn't have windows that go down in the back, but it is pillarless. But when the TTs came out, it was the first car I ever got new. I ordered one from the dealership, came in a beautiful aircraft gray, I believe it was. I had the 225 horsepower. But so I know that this particular platform just carves, unlike a lot of other Audis, just due to their longer wheelbase and motor at the front end. And this was really Audi's first sports car for the masses. So they did have the Sport Quattro in the 80s, but it wasn't really mass pricing, mass availability. The TT totally knocked it out of the park with that. The interior styling is awesome. A little note about the name TT. So it actually, long way around, comes from the Island of Man TT, which is a motorcycle race. And the designers here got inspiration from a company called NSU. NSU was part of Auto Union, which ultimately came together to be Audi in the end. But the NSU had a small car called the Prinz, and eventually it became the Prinz 1000 TT, which was a nod to NSU's motorcycles that they also made that had won TT races. So that's how it gets that roundabout name to the TT. Kind of weird, but I like it. The NSU is a super cool car, the Prinz, that it gets its name from. And I don't know. Enough about this Audi nerd talk though. Let's go out and drive this thing. On the way to the canyon, I'll tell you all about the cool mods to this car and talk about the interior and all that good stuff. Right, so here we are, working our way up into East Canyon in the 2012 Audi TT RS. So again, that's a 5-cylinder, 2.5 liter turbocharged engine, throwing back to the great 5 liters of old, the ones that were used in the early Group B rallies in the Sport Quattro, the one that I had in my coupe that I had modified by 2 Bennett Automotive. These cars are just known, well, the engines rather, these engines are known for their note. There's just nothing quite like a 5-cylinder turbo engine, just the way it sounds. This doesn't quite compare to the old 90s ones, just they had such a unique flutter to the wastegate. Just the way the exhaust sounded was insane. And you know, as things became more modern and you have the more modern blow-off valve and more modern technology on the whole engine, it's a little bit different note, but still pretty awesome. So this isn't just any old TTRS. The original engine as it comes, stock from the factory, would have 360 horsepower and just over 400 foot-pounds of torque. But my friend has gone ahead and he has an 034 Motorsport intake on this. He has a modified downpipe and an APR Stage 2 tune. So essentially now it's got a stony 420 horsepower. That's something I can certainly appreciate. Ever since the TTRS came out, I've wanted to get my hands on one because as I mentioned earlier, I had that same engine in one of my cars and I just grew up on rally, so I really appreciate that, what Audi did with that in rally and the amazing sounds that came from that. As far as brakes go, you do have giant Brembo brakes on here, RS branded. The RS does stand for Racing Sport, and it is Audi's top of the line performance offering. And in this TT, it's really something special. You can't get this 5-cylinder turbo in any other model. The car does feature a 6-speed manual gearbox. Doesn't come any other way in the 2012 model, and really, why would you want it any other way? It's just so much fun to, you know, shift the gears, control the throttle, control that much more of the car. Even if automatic shifting is technically probably quicker than a human, it's not quite as much fun, you know, it's not as engaging to not have that manual. So this thing is just awesome. The thing about an Audi Quattro, and we'll loosely call this one a Quattro since it has the Haldex 4-wheel drive, which I'll get into in a minute, but the thing about the Audi Quattro is it just allows you to be more of a driver than you really are. The car does so much for you as far as keeping you on the road, allowing you to go in late braking, heavy on the gas, correcting as needed. But when you drive the car just how it should be, as a car should be, perfect apexes, perfect throttle inputs, it'll reward that heavily. Now when I say the Haldex is not quite what Quattro normally is, Haldex is really more of the Volkswagen 4-wheel drive, and even though this does have a 50-50 torque split front to rear, it's going to be more front end biased as you push it. Sounds like the suspension's a little soft on my buddy's ride, or the tires are a little wide because we're getting quite a bit of rub. But man, you can just give this thing so much. It just eats up the corners. And the brakes, these giant Brembos they're really something. And you can just see how fast it pinches down. Get on the binders. And with 420 stony horses, you could pretty much pass as needed. Man, what a pleasure it is to be behind the wheel of something like this. TT just carves. It feels right at home in my hands, probably because I had one a few years ago. Of course, it was an earlier model, but the way it carves, It's hard to compare. I mentioned this earlier, but I think that the TT is probably the coolest car that Audi's made, and the TTRS in particular. And the reason I think that is most of the Audis are big, luxury, heavy. You know, they have all the performance, but they just don't carve a canyon the way this short wheelbase does. And man, it just keeps wanting to pull. Let's go sport mode. Man, just listen to it.
Ethan, I like sitting in the front, so sorry, man.
Right, so today not only do I have my son with me in the back here, but I've got my father-in-law with me. This is his first Audi experience. Actually, I believe I took him for a ride in my coupe way back, but this is his first modern Audi experience. And what an Audi to get an experience in. You know, the engine, the way it pulls is amazing, but the brakes are something that you gotta sample to believe. And they're as impressive, I think, as the car's ability to pull, because they just rein you back in. So as far as the suspension modes go for this car, there are basically two settings. There's stiff and stiffer. So you have your normal mode, which is really pretty firm, and it is a magnetic suspension. So when you hit the sport mode, it does stiffen up and it lowers a little bit. The only other car to have this type of suspension at this time was a Ferrari. So pretty cool tech in this car. You can definitely feel it. So the sport mode, as I mentioned, drops the car, stiffens it with the magnetic suspension. You feel a little bit more feedback through the steering wheel, so a little bit tighter there. And additionally, it opens up a flap on the exhaust side, and so you get some more exhaust note. All things that you really like. I mean, it's just exactly what I would hope for. Great note. Just a little bit of a squirrel. No big deal. So ever since the first iteration of the TT, the design has always been about minimalist, but absolutely everything you need, but nothing more. So it's a very driver-driven cockpit. You've got great sport pedals, short shift, shifter. It does have airplane style dials on all of the heating and cooling control vents, so you can just twist them on and twist them off. Very cool feature that a lot of manufacturers have adopted since the inception of the TT. And some people have said that they feel, you know, like the TT is a little bit lacking compared to other RS models as far as what's done with the interior. But I think they fail to take into consideration the original design philosophy of the TT. And I think they're still carrying it true from the first iteration all the way up to the final iterations. So one of the other modifications that my buddy put on this car are wider wheels so that he could fit the 245/35 Michelin Super Sport 19-inch rubber on here. A little something more sticky for the summer compared to what the stock wheel would offer. He does run the stock wheels as his winters. And so you can hear in the hard corners, these Super Sports, they're rubbing a little bit due to that width, but it's not a big deal. all in all, this is basically what I was hoping for. Great 5-cylinder sound, TT carving capabilities, massive brakes, and then of course the ergonomics, the fit and finish of an Audi is something that's just a huge favorite of mine. I mean, they just always get it right with the materials, you know, where your elbows hit on the door sills, you know, center console. Everything lines up to just give you, you know, great comforting ride, performance. The bolster on these TTRS seats are like, oh man, you can feel them hugging. Oh, and there goes that width. The tires could be adjusted, I'd say, as far as the offsets to get the perfect fit. I mean, you don't want rub anywhere, really. You certainly don't want to be cutting new tread as you go. So I'm trying not to lean into it too much. I don't want to destroy my buddy's tires. This time of year in the canyon's pretty hard to beat. There's just so many beautiful colors from the trees. And it happens, the changes just happen so fast. But it's hard to keep an eye on the foliage when there's so many great corners. So there you go, friends. Quick romp up one of my favorite canyons in this 2012 TT RS. If you got a cool car that you'd like me to review, maybe drop a comment. You can hit me up on social media, on Instagram at Auto Afflicted. You can hit me up at Gmail, autoafflicted@gmail.com. I'd be happy to review your car and tell everyone what I think about it. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. Love the ones you're with. Be kind to the ones around you. Maybe drop a like on it, a subscribe, or hit the noties. I don't know. Either way, be well, friends, and we'll catch you on the next episode.